On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. He's a former professional baseball player turned inspirational, world-renowned speaker following the loss of his mother in the 2015 racially motivated mass shooting in South Carolina. He's the author of the two phenomenal children's books, Different and Your Life Matters. His message is one of resilience, forgiveness, and unity, sharing that love is stronger than hate. He's a courageous believer and tremendous husband and father to his two sons. He's just an overall juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the powerful Chris Singleton. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yes, pleasure's all mine. I'm excited for today. Like I was saying before we went on air, I got to ask you, how did I do good by you by the intro?
Oh man, that was fire. I love the voice too, man. That was all that. I love it.
I appreciate it, brother. I know you've done a lot of these, as have I. Obviously, I have my own show, but we're going to keep this different, fresh. The audience is super engaging. They're going to fall in love with you in 2 seconds. Before we dive a little bit deep on the backstory, we're going to get a little weird to start out. You ready for me?
Let's do it.
Chris, what is your superpower?
My superpower. I'm going to say my superpower is empathy. That's what I think my superpower is.
Yeah, I know you're very empathetic. I think it's a great trait. I love that.
No doubt.
Describe yourself in 3 words, Chris.
3 words. Okay. I don't know if you're listening, you can't see me. So number 1, I would say dark, as in complexion, a dark skinned guy. So dark. I'd say caring, and I'd say driven. Yeah.
I'm moved just by those 3 words. I love it. What's something weird about you that a lot of people might not know?
Weird about me. What's weird about me? I don't know, man. I guess something weird is that I love R&B. Like I love singing more music more than anything else. So I don't know if that's weird, but some people might call it kind of soft for a guy to be only listening to R&B and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah. Where do you sing most? In the shower?
No, I don't sing too much, but I love, like 2000s R&B, 90s R&B, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Boys to Men, Usher, that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. That was a good time, especially for that genre.
No doubt.
With everything that you're doing and have done, I know you have different seasons, different chapters. At this point in your life right now, what makes you feel most alive, Chris?
Man, most alive. I'd say, I love being able to share my message like I do as a speaker, but whenever I get the okay of speaking to thousands of people, right? So let's say I get a signed agreement back and they say, Chris, you're speaking to 3,000 educators at this conference. Man, that just makes me feel alive when I get on stage and get to share with that many people. So definitely that.
Yeah, I could definitely appreciate that. I also get that just excess energy when I'm speaking and so forth. So I definitely feel you on that. Was speaking something that came natural to you, or is it a skill that you kind of had to develop?
Yeah, I think it came natural, but with anything that comes natural, you still have to develop it, right? Sure. There's raw talent, but you also want to make sure you refine that and you're not, I guess, raw, like everybody says in sports, right? You want to be able to have some skill behind it too. So it's both.
Yeah, that's profound. I love that answer. And I couldn't agree with you more. We'll do one more weird one and then we'll dive into the backstory. Chris, what is your definition of success?
Definition of success. I think definitely business-wise, financially, I think that's success. But having a family that loves you every single day, being able to look yourself in the mirror as a man or woman of integrity, and then being aligned with your spirituality. Like you got all those things together. That's success to me.
Yeah, that's just straight gripping. And I couldn't agree with you more. And a word that you said that I want to acknowledge is integrity. And even something as simple as like, if you say you're going to do something, like you don't let yourself down. So you start to build that self-trust. You agree with that?
Of course, man. That's what it is right there.
Yeah. I love this. Audience is going to fall in love with you in 2 seconds. They love the back end story. So we'll start a little bit there. We're going to jump around. You grew up in Atlanta and then you moved to Charleston. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, man. Yeah.
How old are you when you moved to Charleston?
We moved. I was in going into sixth grade. So I'd grown up in Atlanta basically until I was 10 or 11 years old. Then we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. So it was definitely a culture shock for me. You know, I grew up in Atlanta where, you know, where I was living is mostly black kids. I moved to Charleston and I was like one of the only black kids on all my teams. So it was different for sure. But yeah, it was my sixth grade year.
Yeah. And you mentioned teams. I take it you got into athletics pretty young.
I sure did, man. I was fortunate to have two parents that played college sports. Dad played football, Tennessee State. Mom ran track at South Carolina State, and so you know, sports was always what I was doing coming up. And I'm even trying to do that with my kid right now. Like I want to have him in sports, but I
Of
don't want to be
course.
the dad that's a jerk, you know. So I'm trying to figure out that fine line right now. But yeah, sports has always been there for me.
Yeah. Aside from obviously sports being fun, what I love about sports is the inspiration and the mindset required. You said both your parents were athletes, like that it just teaches you like a competitive drive and it kind of develops that spirit, especially at a young age, right?
Yeah, I'd also say discipline, man. If you want to be
Yes.
great at something, you got to be disciplined to train every single day, even when you don't want to, right? So that's what I think it mainly did for me, having that routine and staying disciplined.
Yeah, that's gold. I couldn't agree with you more. Was baseball always your number one sport?
It was always my number one. I was always the best, I guess, at baseball. But I love basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan right now. Huge LeBron fan. Like that's my Jordan. If you ask me, I'm a young guy, so that's my dude right there.
I understand. Yeah. Baseball's coming back real soon.
Yeah, for sure. I already told my wife, man, I got to get out to LA, got to see the Lakers play in LA. I want to take my son to a couple games. So we'll have some fun and go watch some basketball for sure.
Yeah, they're going to be fun. They have all the veterans this year, but they have a championship pedigree. That'll be good. I'm a Knicks fan. I say sadly, but it looks like we're turning the corner a little bit. Last year was at least a little promising. Any thoughts on the Knicks?
Yeah, man. I think you got a chance. You got a chance. And I know a lot of Knicks fans. I think of first Knicks fan I think about is Spike Lee, right? And
Of
so people are
course.
finally having they've Knicks fans always have pride in their teams, but there's gonna be a little bit more pride when you guys actually can win some games.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So baseball was your sport. Did you have a team that you wanted to go to, or were you just hoping to obviously make it to the major leagues? And what was that process like when you were kind of getting ready for that strategy?
Yeah, man. So I didn't care what team I wanted to be a part of, right? I say growing up, there's two things that I wanted. Number one, I wanted to get drafted, right? That was the one thing I wanted to do. I didn't care what team. Number two, I wanted to buy my mom a really nice car because she was a teacher and I knew she couldn't do it by herself. So yeah, didn't care what team, but you know, my dad was a Yankees fan coming up. So I did like the Yankees.
Yeah, understood. Can't argue with that one.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we're jumping around a little bit, and obviously this part of the story is very well documented, but it helped shape you. Your mom, the incident in 2015. This happens. There was a mass shooting, and it's a kind of thing like these things happen in the world, but you see them on TV, but you never think it'll happen to you, or it never maybe hits so close to home. Obviously, where were you when this happened?
Yeah, man. I was 18 years young. I just finished up a baseball game and you know, I got a call on my phone from what it looked like was my mom, because it said my mom's name on the phone, but you know, somebody on the other end was yelling and screaming and finally told me, hey, you got to get down to the church right now. And that's when I say the worst of the worst happened. Like you said, you know, some things we see happen on TV, but we never think it'll happen to us. And this is exactly what that was for me. And you know, later on that night, I found out that my mom was taken away along with eight other people by a man who was 21 years old and wanted to start a race war in this country. So that definitely shaped the trajectory of my life and changed my mission for sure.
Yeah. What was your initial emotion?
It was fear, man. It was fear. You know, I just found out that my mother was shot and killed that night, and I didn't at first know why. I found out later on about a day or two later, but um, initial was just fear. How am I going to take care of my family? Like little brother, little sister. I was just scared. I didn't know what to think at first.
Yeah. just insane. And I just want to send you like all my positive energy. I know you're doing your thing now, and we don't believe in coincidences. You're inspiring millions of lives, which was kind of a catalyst from this story. But obviously, it's something that it never obviously gets easier. We kind of just get stronger, and maybe time helps a little bit. After this went down, where were you at? And like obviously, a person's life can kind of go down two different paths at that point, like anger, frustration, and down a really bad road, and maybe some bad decisions, or the very rare, like you, like somehow it ignites something in your spirit and inspires you to have a bigger cause, so to speak. So how did you choose that path?
Yeah, man, I've seen it with people that have you know, experienced trauma at a high rate like this. So there's two ways you can go. Basically, you can say, because this happened to me, now I'll never be able to do X, Y, and Z. Or you can say, hey, because this happened to me, I'm using that as fuel so I can become X, Y, and Z. And so I can do X, Y, and Z. So um, and at this point, my mom was killed in the church, right? She was killed while she was praying at church. So there's two things you can think faith-wise at that moment too. You could say, there's no way God is real if this happens to me in a church. Or you could say, hey, I don't know how this happened, God, but I know I need you to get me through it. And I went with the latter, and I believe I've gotten strength from that. But man, when I looked at my family, I had a brother, my sister, as tough as it was, I knew I had to be able to move forward for us, because um, I was the big bro. I was the pillar of the family after my mother was taken away.
Somebody had to hold the fort down, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then, so you still stayed on the path towards baseball, right?
Yeah, man. So I had this thing where every single day I would train as therapy for me, right? Whether it was lifting weights, whether it was hitting in the cage. I throw some R&B, some reggae on, and I just go in there vibing. And at first I wasn't going to therapy or nothing like that. It was just me uh alone by myself training, right? Lifting weights. I'm a skinny guy, so I didn't get too big, but
Lean,
that's
lean and
why.
mean.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I was, 6'1", buck 85, tops, but I just would train and I would just get stronger, quicker, faster, and go on the batting cages, and just, it was therapeutic for me, man. That process was good. And so I put all that emotion, that energy into promising my mom that I was going to get drafted. Had a successful sophomore year, good sophomore summer playing in these different prospect wood bat leagues, and then my junior year came around, and I was pretty fortunate to be able to get drafted by the Cubs.
Yeah, that's awesome. A dream come true, obviously, at that time. You mentioned at that time you weren't doing therapy. Is that something that you explore now?
Yeah, I went to therapy. Actually, this is why I love the Cubs, man. I got drafted by the Cubs. I played in the minor leagues for them. They ended up, cutting me, but I still love them, even though they released me. But I started going to therapy when I was in the minor leagues. And for me, what people would say is, Chris, how are you letting this sport get you down? Right? You've been through so much, and now you're going to therapy because of your sport. Because I really struggled for the first time professionally playing. And for the first time, my sport wasn't my getaway. And so I had to figure out what else could be that thing. And so I started going to therapy in the minor leagues, and it was really good for me. And it was free, and it's something that not every team has, but the Cubs do. So I'm always going to stand up and say they're a good organization because of that.
Yeah, and I think it's so profound that you said that, because everyone needs an outlet of some sort. And at that time, baseball, although it was always for you, it wasn't then. And you had the outlet of therapy. And a lot of people look at therapy as a misconception, like whatever works, right? Like if you can get something off your chest, or you get some good suggestions, or just someone to hear you, whatever the case may be, if it
Yeah.
elevates your state and it helps in any way, it shouldn't be frowned upon. Anybody should be open to it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think at worst case scenario, man, we bottle so much stuff up as human beings,
Yeah.
right? Some of us use it as fuel. Some of us use it as stuff we don't want to remember. Um, but I think to be a person that's full, that's whole, we need to address everything in our lives, right? Both the good and the bad, and putting it all out on the table. Maybe, whether it's going to therapy every month or going just once to see, if you can finally talk about the things you never talked about before. I think it'll allow you to open up as a human being and really start to know who you are. So it was good for me for sure.
Yeah, amen, brother. And for the audience listening, you should rewind that back and listen to that again. Everybody needs some sort of outlet for whatever the reason. You should obviously explore it. And I love that you touch upon that. I want to go backwards for a second. The guy that took your mom, I know this is a big part of the story because it created forgiveness in you, which is obviously you're now a beacon of forgiveness for millions, and you're just getting started. How was that process, and how were you able to kind of not have so much anger and kind of shift it towards forgiveness? How does one cultivate that?
Yeah, man. Well, I'll say this. So he was 21 years young when he committed the act that he did, and I actually forgave my mother's killer. 24 hours after, I said I forgive him for what he's done. I said my family, we already forgive him. My sister kind of looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" When I said that, you forgive this guy. Um, and I said the words, "Love is stronger than hate." So if we just love the way my mom would, the hate won't be anywhere close to where love is. I didn't know the depth of those words until about, hours after. A bunch of social media followers, that clip was shown all CNN, Fox News, every single news outlet. And I realized the power that those words had. And we came together as a city. We locked arms. There was no, tearing the city down. We came together and we said wrong is wrong. So that part was huge. But I think for me, man, forgiveness gave me the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not going to allow this guy to have the reins on my life anymore. Um, and I was pretty fortunate to be able to experience forgiveness in that way.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to acknowledge you for that. It's obviously not easy to do, especially like you said, like your sister was like, "Are you crazy?" Um, just so much strength and courage, brother. Like I'm feeling it right now, just speaking to you. And it's so true. And we'll dive into this in a little bit. But like when you don't have forgiveness, like when you have all that resentment, the real prisoner is you or us who holds
Yeah.
on to that. So, and we'll jump right a little bit. So forgave him. Where is he now, in jail?
Yeah, he was actually given the death penalty. So some people, when we talk about forgiveness, they think there's no accountability there. And that's not the case, right? He's definitely being held accountable. I wasn't a person that advocated for the death penalty, but I wasn't the only person that lost a loved one. You know what I'm saying? So um, he's definitely getting his conviction right now. He's serving out that sentence.
Yeah, understood. Okay. So you're right. You're gone from the Cubs. So the dream that was baseball this whole time, maybe that's not in the future, so to speak. How did you get into everything that you're doing now from that moment? And maybe just tell the audience exactly what it is that you are doing right now.
Yeah, man. So right now I'm a professional speaker and I write books, right? Children's books thus far. And the way that I got into it was really just there was an E60, there was a basically ESPN 30 for 30 done on me and my story. After that, people would ask me to speak, right? Hey, can you speak to my, middle school soccer team? I'm like, what? What do you mean speak to them? I didn't know it was a thing, right? And it just grew organically. And now I'm speaking to 80 events so far this year. I speak anywhere from 60 to 90 times every single year over the last 4 years, speaking with NBA teams, NFL teams, companies like Microsoft, Boeing, John Deere, Volvo, so many of them. And I'm a young guy. I'm 25 years young, but people hear my story and they hear my mission. So it's gone well.
It's so powerful, brother. 25 years young, and all you mentioned, like some of the biggest companies on the planet, obviously professional sports teams and stuff. So you said someone wanted you to speak in the beginning and you didn't exactly know what they meant. Do you remember the first time you spoke?
Yeah, I do. So I remember the first time that I shared, I was, I think it was, I got an award is what it was. I got an award and they said, you got to give a 10-minute speech afterwards. And I was like, we mean 10-minute speech, right? I thought you just get up there, shake somebody's hand and you get the award. They said, no, you gotta give a speech afterwards. This is like 2016. And so I went up there and I remember it was for NFL moms, NBA moms, and MLB moms was the organization. And so I went down there. It was in Orlando, Florida, and I think it was luck and a blessing because when I got up there, I was super nervous. Right, I got up there and all the lights were shining so bright on me, I couldn't see anybody in the crowd. And so I started speaking, man, and I just, I shared, and the lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, "Hey, I don't know what you think you're supposed to do with your life. I heard you're pretty good at baseball, but you got to keep doing what you did today." And I never looked back after that day. I just started saying yes to every engagement, and I didn't know it was a business until companies started to pay me money that I never could have imagined
Hell
um,
yeah.
from being able to just share my story and my heart and my mission of us all coming together.
And you deserve every dollar of that, brother, because every time you speak, it's a ripple effect, right? Someone hears it, they're impacted in a positive way. Maybe they tell someone or share your message and so forth. You're building a huge legacy at 25 years young. And even just this conversation, like our rapidly growing audience is going to get so much out of it. So I wanted to acknowledge you for that as well. I
Thank you,
absolutely
man.
love this. Yeah, of course. I want to ask you about your faith. I know it's very strong, and I do my homework because obviously I'm a fan and I want to have a great conversation with you. And I saw you say somewhere that God put forgiveness in your heart. So I wanted to ask you, how strong is your faith? And tell us what you mean by that exactly, that he put forgiveness in your heart.
Yeah, well, number one, I'm a man. I was born basically where my mom would make me go to church, that kind of stuff. And a lot of times when you're forced into, religion, I have buddies who are kind of forced as a kid, they stray away from it, right? And that wasn't the case for me. I would have called myself a believer before, but when I lost my mom, man, my faith was tested. It truly was. And I put my faith in the Lord. I actually used to read my mom's old Bibles, and she'd read them from cover to cover with and highlight them. And so I would just read them, and I would read them like a book. I wouldn't even just read them just as the Bible. I would just read it as if it's a novel. And I would read the stuff she would highlight. And I'm seeing this stuff and I'm like, man, this is powerful. My mom used to tell me about the book of Proverbs. So I'm reading these Proverbs, wisdom, and I'm thinking, man, this stuff is good. And so now when I have questions, man, I go to my Bible, I go to my Heavenly Father, I pray about it, I reflect on it. And I'm not one of those people that says, God told me this, God told me that. I don't hear a voice, but I've certain times in my life, I felt like I've been called to do certain things. And sharing my testimony and my faith is definitely one of them. So yeah, that was my faith, and it still is. It's a journey. Nobody's is perfect. I think we're all sinners saved by grace, if you ask me, if you're saved. So it's a journey with my faith. And forgiveness, man. I was 18 years young, and regardless of where you're at in your faith, when your mother's murdered while she's praying, um, I never thought I could forgive somebody for doing that to my mom. That's how I know what was placed on my heart. The night where I forgave my mother's killer, I prayed, and me and I went to Christian University, and I prayed with the pastor. I said, hey man, I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying to these people, man. I got all these cameras out here. And he said, well, let's pray. Let's see what the Lord has for you. And I said, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying, but could you speak through me? And that's when I said those words, man, love is stronger than hate. And so after that, I knew that God placed that on my heart. And I see the power of forgiveness. Like you mentioned, forgiveness, they said, this is a quote right here. It says, forgiveness is like setting a prisoner free only to later realize that you yourself are the prisoner. And so I realized that I was a prisoner if I didn't forgive. And I'm grateful that God placed it on my heart for sure.
That's heavy, my man. It's gold and such gems for the audience. It's so true. Like it's something that I'm working on, and I've realized somewhat recently, like when even if you forgive yourself for things that you've done, like mistakes that you made or setbacks that you've had, like holding on to any type of resentment does nobody any good. Not you,
Yeah,
not the person, nothing. So I think,
definitely.
yeah, go
And
ahead.
when you think about it, man, like a lot of times we're holding a grudge against somebody against what they did, and they might not even be thinking about it anymore, right? They're living their
Most of the
lives.
time.
You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? They're living their lives. They're with their family, and here we are thinking, man, they don't know what they did to me, or that I bet they're thinking about it. Just like no, they don't. They moved on, and so there you are sitting there with that pain, that hurt, which is okay. It's real, but you can't hold that resentment forever. They're living your lives, so you got to move forward and live yours just as well.
So valuable. It's so true. I would say 99% of the time, the person's not even thinking about it. We're just caught up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shifting gears for a second, I saw you say somewhere, and this is a quote. It's a little cliche, but I couldn't agree more. Life doesn't necessarily get easier. We get stronger. And I'll add, because we become more battle tested and so forth. Touch upon that, Chris.
Yeah, man. And it does sound super cliche, but to be honest with you, when you've been through something, you know how to get through something. Right. And I see, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I see people who have never gone through anything, and they get a flat tire and they act like that's the biggest thing in the world. Right.
Well,
And I know they haven't experienced anything, but I'm like, man, you got people overseas that are losing their lives, right? People that are going to wars. You got people that are losing loved ones every single day. And a hole in your tire is the biggest thing in the world to you. And so for me, going through what I went through, raising two teenagers as a 20-year-old, right? Trying to figure out how do we, provide for our family? How do I pay for my brother's college, my sister, like all these different things that I've gone through in my life at a young age. Now I think, man, after losing both of my parents, taking care of, like, there's nothing I can't get through. God has got me through the worst things in the world. So now I'm thinking, man, I've got confidence to get through my next storm. Maybe it'll all be sunshine and rainbows going forward. But if it's not, I know I can get through it just because I've already gone through what I think is the worst of the worst.
Yeah, so deep. I love all of this. And also, like, let's just be honest, like, bad things happen to good people, but it's our attitude towards how we respond to that, right?
Yeah, and some people may be saying, well, nothing like this will ever happen to me. And it doesn't matter if it's a small scale or a large scale. Like, adversity doesn't care if it happened to me at 18. It doesn't care if you're 45. Like, sudden death is real to everybody. If you're 62 years old and you're finally about to retire and all of a sudden your wife or husband gets cancer, like adversity doesn't care what you look like or where you're at in your life. And so nobody's above thinking that things like this can happen.
Yeah, this is terrific. I love all. It's so true. And like, adversity doesn't pay favorites, right? Like, it's inevitable. Spoiler alert, it's a guarantee, adversity, but it's how we respond to it. I recently went through some adversity myself, and I'm at a place now where I'm able to handle it so much better. Whereas the Craig of even a year ago would have handled it completely different. So you're speaking to my soul right now, and I love it. Another thing that I heard you say that I wanted to ask you in this conversation is, if we listen before judging, that's where we can really move forward.
Oh man, I love that. So I do a lot of work with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So and oftentimes we judge people immediately, man. We judge them by the way they look, we judge them by the clothes they wear. And I always say you should hear their story before their opinion. So I'll break it down what that means. So oftentimes we judge somebody based on their opinion without realizing, hey, they've got a story behind theirs, just like I've got a story behind mine. Because when you break everything down, there's usually two reasons why we believe what we believe. Either we've been taught it, right, from our parents, our grandparents, our books or something, or we've experienced something that make us believe that. And so we forget those things when we see somebody standing to the right or to the left of a topic or whatever it may be. We forget they've got a story behind it. Me personally, my story is that my mother was shot 8 times while she was praying. And so my opinion is I don't like guns. And I think it's pretty simple why I don't like them, because you heard about my story. But if I immediately come out and just say, hey, I don't like guns, people are automatically going to judge me and ridicule me and say this and say that without first hearing my story. So the key to empathy and coming together is just learning about somebody's story first. And then you hear about their opinion or their stance. And then you say, okay, you know what? I can understand why Chris doesn't. If my mom was taken away the same way his was, I could probably understand why I wouldn't like guns either. So, man, I think, learning about each other's story before we hear that opinion is definitely huge in coming together.
Makes perfect sense. I agree with everything that you're saying. You got to listen first, and then maybe you can understand where someone's coming from. Again, just such gold. I wanted to ask you, why children's books?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. So as I've been speaking, I've been fortunate, like I said, to share with some companies. 2019, I did like 30 colleges, so I was doing a lot in that age range. Do some high schools here and there, but I would never feel comfortable sharing my message with younger kids, right? Who wants to tell a 8-year-old that their mom was shot and killed because she's Black, right? I think that's just too gory. That's too, it's not my place to take away their innocence. And so my sister basically said, well, why don't you write children's books? I said, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. I can share the same message without telling the gory details. And so I write books that are multicultural themed. I have a kid coming from Africa to the United States. He's different, so he gets picked on, but they celebrate his differences in the end. It goes for people with disabilities. It goes for everybody that's different, right? Because at the core of who we are, we're all different, and I don't care who it may be. So it's all about celebrating one another. And one of the things I do with all my children's books is I include my mom in it some way, somehow. So my first book, my mom was the teacher, Miss Sharonda. My second book, my mother was the mother. And so going forward, I've got another book coming out next year about baseball, another children's book. So I'm excited about it. And of course, my mom will be there just as well as a tribute to her.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning of this series, and she's going to be in all of them. And I love it. It's so touching and so moving. What's your process for writing a book? Does it take a long time?
So adult books for me, yes, I'm not a writer. I'm a speaker that writes, right? There's some writers that have sold, 20 million books, and then they speak just because it's part of what you do as an author, but they might not be great speakers. They just are great writers. Me, I'm not a great writer. I feel like I'm a pretty decent speaker. So writing children's books isn't that tough. Just the overall getting the finished product is kind of tough because you want to make sure you're meticulous with the details of the colors. And I struggle with my colors. I'm colorblind for certain colors. So trusting my wife, trusting my editor, trusting my publishers. That part's pretty meticulous, but it doesn't take a super long time for me. And I love it. It's part of my mission. So I love it.
It's obvious you're so passionate about it. And for the audience, Chris is being humble. He's more than a pretty good speaker. Check out all his content on YouTube, on his Instagram, everywhere. He's so moving and it's unbelievable. And I know you're just getting started. I wanted to ask you, because this is a strategy that I actually use as well. Is it true that when you were going to write your first book, you told everybody because psychologically you knew that would hold you accountable?
Everybody, literally everybody. I told everybody I was going to write a children's book. I had no idea how to write a children's book, right? Without my publishers, like I still step by step, I know most of it now, but there's some details that I still need my publishers help with. But I told everybody because then when it comes down to it, some people say don't put that out there. It might, put bad energy on it. But I'm like, no, I want people to look at me like, hey, where's that? How's that coming along? And just me being a man of integrity, I can't feel good about myself if I say, oh, I haven't moved since I talked to you last. So I think it's a great strategy. I'm a huge goals person. I tell my goals to everybody too. I don't care. I'm not bashful about it, right? Somebody tells me I'm dreaming too big. So what? Because I crushed last year's goals, right? That's the kind of person that I am. So I let it be known.
I love that. And let me know if you know a good surgeon. You have to surgically remove the smile from my face. I'm the same exact way. Like, think if someone's if someone's telling you that you're dreaming too big, it's probably a good sign.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And
What were you gonna
sure.
say?
Now I was just thinking anybody that's done something, worth remembering has probably been told, hey, you're dreaming too big. Like that's not doable. So
Yeah.
keep dreaming.
Yeah. And surround yourself with people that, you know, can kind of believe you, like support you, like, yeah, that's doable. You don't want to hear, you want to be around people that are doing big things as well. Both big thinkers, I could tell.
Yeah, man. Exposure is huge. Like once you've been exposed to people, like I remember growing up, like as a kid, my parents were teachers. My dad was he worked in special ed. My mom was a speech language pathologist at school. So I would always hear like 100 grand. And then I would meet people that make 100 grand in a day. And I'm like, man, there's just a difference between being in different groups of people, right? Just it's different. So I definitely enjoy being around people that challenge me, that show me there's more, there's more impact that can be made. So yeah, it's big being around good people, like you said.
Yeah, 100%. Something that I saw you say somewhere is after you lose a loved one, it makes you cherish the ones that are still around a lot more. And for the audience listening, like we will land the plane with this, you don't necessarily have to go through something like that. You could just take, Chris's experience, so to speak, and apply it. How key is that?
Man, it's huge. I just think about the memories I have with my parents, right? Some of the best memories I have is Christmas, right? I was a kid, just loved Christmas. That's me. I still love it to this day. And I remember one Christmas after I lost my mom, I was at a point where I just had my first son, and I had extreme joy. And I thought to myself, there's no way I could have imagined being this happy after losing my parents the way that I did. But I had that joy. And so for anybody that still has their parents, man, love on them because you don't, tomorrow isn't promised for you, but especially for them. Number one. And number two, the people around you that you still do have, unfortunately, their days are numbered and we don't know when the last day is here. And so make sure every single day you're giving it your all, but you're also giving your family just as much. So that's probably some advice I have for people that still want to cherish their loved ones.
I knew we were going to get deep today, but this is awesome. Laugh, cry, all of it. This is why I wanted to collaborate with you so bad. I'm such a fan, brother. And also, people always ask me, like, who are my mentors and so forth. I'm just curious. I kind of want to get access inside your brain. Like, who are some of your mentors? Who are some people that you look up to? Or maybe some people that you sharpen the axe to that get you excited as you continue to explode on your journey?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I used to say people I looked up to were athletes until I met some athletes that, were probably looked up to big time, and they're jerks. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yes, I do.
yeah. And so I don't really quote unquote look up to somebody unless I know them personally. One guy that I look up to who's a mentor of mine, his name is Inky Johnson.
I'm familiar.
He's a speaker. Yeah, he's phenomenal, man. He's helping me out a ton in this speaking industry, right? So he's one of my guys. Another guy by the name of John Gordon, who's an author and a speaker, wrote a book called The Energy Bus. One of my guys as well. Then there's another brother of mine who was a chief diversity officer at MUSC, the Medical University of South Carolina, and he's a really good dude. And all these guys, I call it the full package when they're able to, have your family, right? Love your family, be there, present with them, but also be able to crush it in the world and make an impact. So these are guys that are doing that thing.
Yeah, this is awesome. The only negative is that we don't have 10 hours to speak today, because I absolutely love this conversation. I know the audiences as well. Where's the best place for the audience to support you, catch up with you, hang out with you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah, man, you guys can go to my social media, @Singleton_2. So whether it's Twitter, Instagram, I'd probably say I hang out there mostly, but I'm on all of them: LinkedIn, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. They should all be verified. So @Singleton_2 is where you can find me, or chrissingleton.com.
Awesome. I'm going to tag you on some stuff on Instagram too. I'm super excited to build a relationship. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned there's an ESPN documentary on you. Where can people find that?
Yeah, if you Google Chris Singleton, Love is Stronger, you'll be able to see that documentary. It's pretty phenomenal. Great guy. Ben Hauser, who was a producer on that with ESPN, phenomenal human being.
When was that filmed?
That was filmed in 2015, right after I lost my mom. So it was pretty fresh. So a lot of the emotions are there, but it's good to watch.
Yeah, awesome. We'll land it with this one. I think I might know the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. For anybody that's going through a really tragic piece of adversity in their life right now, what's the most important character trait to possess to kind of go through that adversity?
I'd say being resilient is probably the number one thing you have to think about in every aspect of life, but especially adversity. When you're faced with something that's tough, being able to fight through that and know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. When I was living in this retirement home, when I was playing minor league baseball, I remember I saw this thing on the wall, and it said, "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. Life is about learning to dance in the rain." And so I saw that, and it stuck with me. And be resilient, but keep dancing in the rain.
Hell yeah. Mic drop right there. Bang. This conversation was awesome, brother. It was one of the shorter ones, short and sweet. And we covered so much ground on it. Like I said earlier, I'm excited to personally build a relationship with you, and God willing, take the stage with you at some point in the future. Thank you for your time. I want to end it with this, Chris. I want you to know that you are the definition of resilience, grit, and forgiveness. From going through the unimaginable loss of losing your mom to using your pain as purpose moving forward, impacting millions of lives worldwide. You're a legend, role model, and beacon of hope for anyone coming up today with big goals and aspirations. Your mindset and faith is absolutely bulletproof. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. You have my word right here, right now. This will absolutely not be the last time that you and I collaborate. Thank you so much for your gems today, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the opportunity to be on.
Same. Have a great day, Chris.
You too. Take care.